serious TV drama podcast, the best of 2020 edition. I'm Scott, and the duo joining me on this look back at the TV landscape of the past year, the echo, the shadow, to me, it's Brian and Jamie. Hey, Brian and Jamie.
Hey, how's everybody doing? I'm happy to be here tonight and look forward to talking about the year in TV. How you doing, Jamie?
I'm doing great. Happy no longer 2020.
You know,
well, let's keep our fingers crossed.
I know
rough start. It's been a rough start.
I'm about to say, I know what the calendar says. Are we sure it's not like, December 39th right now or something? Because
no
between what's happening out there, and we don't even need to say what happened this week because we all know, and then my own life being not so great either. As this year's kicked off, I'm like, yeah, I should have known turning a calendar page wasn't going to actually make that big a difference.
Cancel this streaming service. It sucks.
But I'm against that because I'm against cancel culture. But obviously we could spend a year and a day talking about last year, which lasted, 10 years in a day, I think. But I think we're going to sidestep most of the stuff we kind of would prefer to either forget or just maybe don't want to get into and really talk about why we're here, which, like I said, looking back at the year in television. I mean, as far as what was happening in the world and in our country, whatever, that certainly impacted to a certain extent. Everything from the fact that, well, all of us were home watching probably a lot more TV than we normally would have. So that's number one, and for that reason, COVID, that also, I would say, impacted a lot of shows that cut their seasons short. Things were truncated. Things probably didn't quite end the way you wanted them. Some things didn't get, renewed because of this, whatever. And then you also had the stuff with, obviously, the level of, things, the need and demand for, racial justice. I think that also impacted a number of TV shows, either in the content of the actual show we were watching, or it affected the way we watched those shows. So it's an interesting year, I would say, for those reasons, beyond anything else.
Yeah, there were some shows that got started back, some that didn't come back, some that didn't make it. And I know there were shows I liked that didn't survive. Like I was hoping there would be another season of Glow to talk about this year.
Yep.
I really enjoyed that show and was sad. I think it was a victim of, once the COVID cancellation came, the costs of getting that cast back together,
Yes.
Such a big cast, and COVID protocols sort of shut that down. But I was surprised making my list that I was wondering if I could come up with a top 10. And now that I've looked back, as this year's lasted so long, I guess I watched more than I realized I had. And I look forward to talking about it.
Yeah, there's way more TV. I have to seriously reconsider my life. I think that I have watched everything that was offered up. So we'll see how it goes. It was really hard to come up with the top 10 out of like the 30 shows I watched.
Right. Well, I the way I look at the year as far as just the TV itself or the quality, I would just say I think there was a lot of good to very good stuff. I don't know if, and specifically drama-wise, as opposed to comedy, because I'm always of two minds. I got to keep that stuff separate, unlike every other person doing lists and critics, or whatever, because that's just the way my mind operates for whatever reason. It's not as evolved as everybody else. Outside of maybe one show I can think of, I don't think anything really reached the heights of at least a few series from just last year. If you look at 2019, if I remember, my own personal top 3 were Chernobyl, Watchmen, and the final season of Mr. Robot. I'm going to tell you right now, I think those 3 are heads and shoulders above almost everything that I saw in 2020, with maybe one exception, which we all know what it's going to be, but we'll get to it later. So, okay. So, we should probably get to the list telling. I don't know. So kids out there, the way we're going to do this, as I just said, I'm Mr. Got to do things separately, prima donna, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to go through my own top 10 of TV comedies for 2020. And then we'll finally get away from me and we'll get to hear some thoughts that Brian and Jamie have on and what they're going to do with their lists, which will be a bit more interesting than what I'm doing. But when it comes to TV comedy, I probably should preface this by, a couple things, because I got a feeling my list might be a little bit lacking by true critical standards. I don't know. I think I've said this before on the podcast, but I'm not sure. I'm typically very slow to even try out new TV comedies, with very few exceptions. They just don't tend to have that same compelling hook that I guess would lure me to check them out when they initially debut. And sometimes, even the few times that does happen, I can be very disappointed, and I'll get into that later. So, I know there's a bunch of comedy series out there that can be found, everywhere, HBO, Hulu, wherever. I just haven't even seen them yet. And I can't guarantee I'm ever going to watch them. And I know the titles, your Raimis, your Daves, your penises or pen 15s or whatever. There's all these really great, powerfully female-led comedies are on HBO now. I just haven't gotten around to seeing them. I don't feel that bad about it, though, because if you pay attention to any, long-standing TV critics, they always talk about there's always a lot of TV that they're not watching. Like Alan Sepinwall himself has said he has never watched Peaky Blinders. He just hasn't watched it because he just doesn't have time to watch everything. My blind spot tends to be comedies. And when I look at this list, 9 of my 10 series have had more than one season. And over the last year or two, I probably had to play major catch up with like 7 of them. So it means I was only there at the start for maybe 1 or 2 of these series at all. And finally, I do not have Apple TV. I end this year with a whole bunch more streaming services than I began the year with between HBO Max, Disney Plus. Now I've got CBS All Access, whatever. I just don't have the time and money for Apple TV too. So I'm sure Ted Lasso is an amazing series, and it's not going to appear on any of my lists. I'm sure that Mystic Quest show, which was done by the people behind It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, I've heard great things about it. I'm probably never going to see it. So they're just not going to be on the list. So with all that, let's get to it. That way you guys can start throwing your opinions in the mix as well. This is my top 10 comedy series of 2020. And I kick off number 10. Oh boy. I kick off number 10 with Star Trek Lower Decks. Now, you're gonna laugh more when you hear what I have to say about this. Because, I've actually never watched more than one episode of Rick and Morty. And I will eventually. I will. And I know everybody raves about it. And apparently those guys, they're the dudes that are behind this show. But that doesn't impress me that much. Because I had really high hopes for this show, because everyone I know was telling me about it, because they know I'm a Trek guy, and they're Trek people, Trekkies, Trekkers, whatever. And I thought it was cute, but not that much else. I don't want to award points for, ooh, you made an amusing reference to the original series, or, hey, look, there's someone from Next Generation. And honestly, I kind of hate the main female character. I really, really, really do not like her at all. I find her annoying and grating. I'm just like, oh. So, and more importantly, she's not funny. So right now you're going, wait a minute. This is your top 10 comedies of the year. Like, you know what that means? It means I had to struggle to find a 10th comedy I watched. So my number 10 slot became, a show that would normally be like probably on a dishonorable mention slot, but I already got a show for that one. So I don't know if either of you guys have watched this show or not. I don't know if maybe you guys might like it more than I do, but I didn't hate it. I was just like, that's cute. That's about it.
I haven't seen it. A good friend of mine who's a big Star Trek fan likes it, but doesn't love it.
Yeah, I've seen a few episodes. It's definitely, for a particular sense of humor and somebody who is a huge fan of Star Trek because of all the references. It's fun. It's, it's a great show to have in the background when you're sitting down and you're going to, eat a meal really quick. I mean, I don't have any major complaints about it, but it's not something I'd probably go digging for with any real attention.
It basically became the show that, we're going to record a podcast in a few days. I can binge this. Oh, all right. So let's move on to things I like at least a little bit better. A little bit. My number 9 would be the 11th season of Archer. Archer came back. After 3 seasons, bouncing through this surreal dreamland where the adventures were ranging from, it was the 40s film noir to the far reaches of outer space, Sterling Archer has finally woken up from his coma, which lasted for 3 years or 3 seasons. And the gang, they're all back to being, a super covert and apparently, in his absence, super competent spy agency. Obviously, and of course, that all changes when Archer comes back. It's a decent season. What I thought was interesting about it, in many ways, perhaps more, it was more about character than any previous season of Archer has ever been. So in that respect, it might have made it a tad less funny than the classic Archer seasons. And I look at the first few as like, quote unquote, classic, but it was still a welcome return. I was kind of getting tired of like, okay, what's the new crazy environment they're going to come up with this season? So I'm glad to see them back in action as, a spy agency. So that would be my number 9 choice.
I agree with your assessment. I did see it and I liked it. I like that they returned to the world of the pre-dream stuff, but I like that world was somewhat different and it wasn't just like rebooting it as sort of Archer classic.
Right.
Because I think they played that tune so many times. It was nice to see some character development. It was an enjoyable season. I thought it was. I mean, if we were given grades, I would say it was probably like a B minus, maybe. Yeah. But it was good.
Go on.
I've never cut an episode. I have nothing to add to this.
The first few seasons are definitely worth checking out, Jamie. Yeah, but especially with
it's on my very long backlog. Watching 30 series plus in 1 year isn't enough, but I have a list. I have a list that goes much longer.
And special note about the first few seasons, it feels like they have like half the cast of Arrested Development throughout the series as well at a certain point. Because Jessica Walter is one of the regulars on it, and she's fantastic. So let's move on to number 8. Number 8, you can tell these are all things I've watched in the last couple weeks. Number 8, oh man, was the 9th season of Letterkenny. Okay, now I honestly wanted to rank this higher, but reflecting on the other shows in my own little countdown here, I couldn't do it. And not that a comedy series should really be sunk by the last few minutes of the last episode of the season, but I seriously do not know what they were thinking when they ended this latest season of Letterkenny. I mean, there's generally, the way the show proceeds normally, there's usually a couple story arcs every go around. But this season, the arcs were really barely there. Basically, Katie was on the prowl all season after breaking up with her cheating boyfriend. And those puckheads, Riley and Jonesy, joined a beer hockey league. And not really much else storyline-wise that went beyond any single episode. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I use that phrase deliberately because in many ways, it's almost like, early Seinfeld, where the show is almost literally about nothing. There is an episode that is about everyone just hanging out at home and falling asleep. You couldn't get an episode to be more about nothing than that, But, oh man, those last couple minutes. Okay, and you know what? Spoiler for anyone who's a fan of Letterkenny but hasn't watched the season yet. Put your fingers in your ears for like a minute. I don't need to talk about this more than a minute. You all gone? Okay. First of all, who cares that the exes of Katie and Daryl are throwing hip to each other? Who cares? Who cares? And why even hint that Wayne would even consider getting back with Marie? when he's a honeybee back with Rosie at this point, eh? So it just, the last couple minutes just made no sense. Everything was just fine up until, and if they just ended normally, they didn't need to have like a little teaser cliffhanger or anything. The show really isn't really predicated on that. They've done that before, but at least it organically built to that. This seemed kind of, Duek Machina bullshit thrown in at the end, and it just made no sense to me. Again, does that take away from the entire season? Not really, but because the season wasn't really about very much to begin with, and all of a sudden you hit us with this in the last couple minutes, it kind of made me go, ugh. And yeah, I thought this would be a top 5 show, at a certain point, but now it's like, no, you're number 8.
I think my take on it is this sort of is the little show that sort of built by word of mouth, and in the last couple of years really has sort of blown up. And I think that the end of this season, the only word I can think of to describe it is it was just sort of gimmicky. And this show isn't really gimmicky, and that's not what's good about this show. So I think it was a good season, but I thought that ending was almost like, hey, we need to add a cliffhanger. We've been doing this a while. Let's stick something in here to keep people excited for season 10. But that's not the kind of thing, I think, if you've stuck with this show that you really want to mull on till next season. It's not stuff you care about that much.
Jamie, do you watch Letterkenny, or is that not on your list?
I watched the first season, a little bit of second. Here's the thing. As you know, I grew up in central Minnesota, a lot of friends from northern Minnesota. Like, I knew these guys. Like, half of my school bus was like miniature versions of these people. So like, there's the humor's there. I get a lot of really great laughs, especially like in the first half of the first season. For some reason, I feel is always better than the second, but it also takes its toll on me as I watch it, because I'm like, oh my God, I cannot escape my hometown. So I have a love-hate. I have a love-hate with it. It is really funny, but I did not catch this newest season.
Okay. So, by the way, we now know whenever Jamie says Minnesota, she really means Manitoba. So just so it's clear, because she's clearly Canadian now, from what she said.
Oh, trust me when I tell you, if you cross that central line in Minnesota, you're pretty much Canadian.
I understand.
It's a rule.
Gotcha. I'll add it to my reasons why I'm never going to go to that part of the country. So, which takes us to number 7. Number 7. Oh, and I got a treat for you with this one. Number 7 is, and I feel something a lot of people forgot, maybe, thank you, COVID, whatever. Number 7 is the 10th season, the welcome return of Curb Your Enthusiasm. I mean, I was just so happy to see this show back at all. And then you get the Spite store concept. That's amazing. God, you're talking to a guy whose half of his life was built on spite. I love that. And then you also get to see Ted Danson's dark side, which compared to his role on certain other shows, which may or may not be brought up in this podcast, it's kind of a delight to see him being like so pissed off and angry and just, and just become, he and Larry just become each other's nemesis. It's just so much fun. Speaking of fun, you get one episode with John Hamm showing up, and as we've seen on several other things, from Saturday Night Live to Unforgettable Kimmy Schmidt, whatever, John Hamm's comedy chops are just as excellent as his dramatic ones are. And here's the thing, my special little moment here. JB Smoove, his character Leon, continues to steal scene after scene after scene. And there's, outside of maybe even more than Jeff Garlin, there's no one who appears regularly on Curb Your Enthusiasm who clearly cracks Larry up as much as what JB Smoove pulls off. Again, we know a lot of the show is built on improvisation. We know how they structure their scripts, which gives the actors room to kind of go off and do their things within the course of scenes. You do get the impression that JB must be coming up with some stuff just from the way Larry, has a problem keeping he cannot keep a straight face. So here's the thing. I've got a bunch of other comedies to talk about. And, Brian and Jamie, they're going to be talking about a few comedies too, whatever. And obviously, there's a bunch of comedies I thought were better. But the thing that made me laugh more than anything else this entire past year, and, any laughs you can get in 2010 were, hard to come by, and you treasure them like jewels, whatever. And even though this happened before COVID, I must have watched this little bit of an episode I don't know how many times. Then I discovered it was on YouTube, and I must have watched it on YouTube, I don't know, another 50, 100 times. I don't know why. I'm not saying it's comedy brilliance. It's not. But it makes me laugh more than anything else has in the past year. So I'm going to attempt to do something we don't do too often on this show. I did it with Brian. Did I do it with you once when I played a clip from Columbo? I think the limerick.
I played a clip one time. Yeah, yes, you did do that.
I was so happy. The limerick thing. So that might be my most proud podcasting moment of the year. I remember the time I played a clip from Columbo, and it actually sounded good over the microphone. So I don't want to reenact the clip myself. I'd rather just play it. So hopefully I can get this going the right way. And
oh, look at this thing. Fuck. My mother's mink stole. Oh, she loved this stuff. Fucking beautiful. Yeah. I can't throw this out. I'm sending it to the dry cleaner.
I was making a big comeback, too.
Comeback?
Yeah. See, when they wore those things, ladies and gentlemen carried themselves a certain way. All the guys called the ladies toots. Hey, toots. And the girls would go poo-poo-pa-doop. Poo-poo-pa-doop. That's what they did.
What does that even mean? Why would they say poo-poo-pa-doop?
It's a cute thing. It gets a rise out of guys and shit. Poo-poo-pa-doop.
Now we get a rise out of you? What we going
fuck yeah. If I lived in the fucking 40s and some girl said poo-poo-pa-doop, I know I'm tapping that ass.
I'm sorry. The poo-poo-pa-doop. I must have said that 1,000 times over the course of 2 weeks. I couldn't stop laughing. It just, and again, if you look that up on YouTube, just put Curb, Leon, Poop, whatever, and you see Larry's face, he's trying not to laugh. He's like, really? That turns you on? Poop, poop. I'm sorry. I love that I'm going to be talking about so many higher ranking shows in all my lists, but that's the only clip I'm playing because I just felt I had to do it. All right.
Well, I thought this season of Curb was awesome. Larry, it's obvious that HBO has just told Larry, whenever you want to make a season, just make a season. Let us know.
Yeah.
And his ability to do whatever he wants and just be absurd. And this cast of characters getting to see dancing. I love this season of Curb. It was a great start to early in the year. And it kind of hit me by surprise. Didn't really know it was coming, and boom. Really enjoyed it, loved it, thought it was hilarious.
Well, there's such a great thing that Larry David has tapped in on for years and years and years, and that is that there's not much that is funnier than a not nice person being surrounded by nice people. It's the idea of being nice becomes such an absurdity that there's no room for it to go except for to funny.
I like to think that the reverse of that is how Scott sees the show.
Yeah, that's exactly. That's exactly what I'm thinking the whole time.
Like, if you're a super strongly nice. Opinionated person, that you break the nice people around you down, and eventually, when they get angry, you say, "See, that was underneath hilarious. The whole time."
Exactly. Oh, there's nothing I like better than bringing a little darkness into everybody else's.
I just love watching a not nice person attempt social niceties. It's just the most awkward, wonderful, ugly thing to watch.
See what I love is the
It's
fact.
so funny.
What I love is the fact that he tends to mock and dislike those social niceties.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah,
And it's definitely I love that there's I mean, obviously we have a lot of the same takes on the same show, but also the idea of having like a Midwest versus East Coast partnership to it is really hilarious, because there's I don't know, there's a lot that I see when we have conversations that we can actually see in shows that are designed this way.
Yeah, that's very funny. I hadn't thought of it that way. Excellent. All right, so let me move on through the list to number 6. My number 6 choice is season 2 of Harley Quinn. Now, I know I might be blurring the lines a little bit by listing Harley Quinn as a comedy, but it is, and if you don't think so, you're wrong. Because, you got comedic talent like Tony Hale, Alan Tudyk, Ron Funches, Jason Alexander, J.B. Smoove, he's on this too, Jim Rash, Dietrich Bate, all these people. And you also get the surprisingly strong and even touching here and there vocal performances of Katie Coco and Lake Bell, excellent as Poison Ivy. I think it truly deserves to be on any list. And unlike Star Trek Lower Decks, here you have a major billion-dollar universe franchise making fun of itself. And guess what? It's actually both pretty bold and daring, a billion times more than the Star Trek show is, and it's way funnier. It's super funny, which I can't say about the Trek show. I don't know why I'm slagging that show again here, but I couldn't help it. It's not that bad. And again, I don't even hate the show. I think I just wanted it to be better than it was. That's all. But Harley Quinn season 2, as season 2 might actually be an improvement on season 1, and season 1 is great. So it really, I think it deserves a top 10 heading the way I gave it.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a wonderful show. I really like the relationship between Poison Ivy and Harley on it. The way that they really grow that by leaps and bounds in season 2. It's hilarious. And to not put too fine a point on it, I remember a conversation you and I had, Scott, where you said to me that they do some of the best stuff ever done with some of the DC characters in this show. And it's comic, but they use a lot of the DC characters and villains to greater effect than the big franchise movies have. Yeah. And I mean, it has heart. It's funny. It has an offbeat sense of humor, and boy, is it mature. I mean, it's super mature for a comic, for a superhero sort of comic type world show. But yeah, I really enjoyed this show, and it doesn't surprise me it's this high on your list, and it was really great.
Yeah, I started watching it off of your suggestion, actually, when we were podcasting The Boys, and I like it. It's really fun. I love the design. The humor is, like Brian was saying, just it's adult. It's adult humor. It's good jokes. But it's also really, really pretty and has some sort of like real human quality to it. It's well done.
Right. It was a show that when I first started to watch it, the first episode or two, I was kind of like, oh, it's just an excuse for them to be hyper violent and, ooh, we can curse now. But then I gave it a bit more time, and then I realized, oh, they're doing something else here. They're doing a lot more here. And yeah, it's everything you guys said. And especially when you get to the second season, yeah, it's quite mature. they don't shy away from jokes of that nature. But they certainly nail them really well. The surprising characters, again, and if you don't care anything about comic books, it doesn't matter. You'll still love the show. If you happen to be a comic book geek type person, the fact that you're going to have scenes between Harley Quinn and Darkseid probably will blow your mind, because those two characters should never inhabit the same panel ever. That doesn't even make sense. But it made sense on this show. It's just, and Alan Tudyk's Joker, while it might not quite be Mark Hamill's Joker, it's a damn decent one at least. Alan Tudyk is like, the go-to guy for the lower tier DC Universe stuff apparently. Alrighty then. So on to number 5. Ooh, Scotty likes animation. Number 5 is Big Mouth season 4. Man, any flack that this show got for some of the quote unquote missteps they made in season 3, they pretty much made up for in season 4. The camp episodes, which I think are the first 3 episodes of the season, they're just flat out gut busting, from the giant period to gut busting, that gut busting crap that Andrew is unable to take, with that stubborn, constipating turd that's voiced by Paul Giamatti, no less. Who else would you cast as a piece of shit? There are a few, but not great episodes midway through, but then, the final 3 episodes are again really strong. I really love this show. This was one of the, again, like most of the shows on this list, this is one of those shows someone else had to convince me to check out a couple seasons ago. And it's one of those like, it's one of my go-to recommendations. When someone's like, I'm looking for something funny, it's usually the first thing that, like, at least up until the last couple weeks, this would be the first show that would come to my mind and say, have you watched Big Mouth yet? You should watch Big Mouth. That's how much I like that show.
Yeah, it's a good show, good season. I thought whatever issues it may have had, it course corrected this season. And I will say, this show does a wonderful job of balancing the scatological with the heart. Mm-hmm. And this season there were some jaw dropping tightropes they walked. That really in lesser hands could have went horribly wrong.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I think that they pull it off. It's the kind of show you can watch and get really deep with, and it raises issues. Or it's a show you can just sit and enjoy it on a check out and enjoy it on a base level. But I thought this season was really good.
Jamie, do you watch it?
Yeah, it's got. I had one mention that I have to say, but I mean, all of these things. It's funny. It's all of this, but it has such a great cast for an animated show. It's one of those things like animation is, when we grew up, animation was supposed to be kids. It's not for adults. And somewhere there in the 90s, probably thanks to The Simpsons more than anything, animation started to become a way to really push adult comedy. And when you can get a show that casts 90% comedians, it's great. I have no complaints about the show. It's really fun, and everyone should check it out.
Indeed. Absolutely agree. And just to hook on to one last thing, something that you had mentioned, Brian, about how far they go. I mean, I remember going crazy when the show Crazy Ex-Girlfriend finally gave in and did a whole thing about period sex, which is really an online song that I don't think they used on the show, but you could watch it online, a 3-minute song about it. And this season, and you had the whole gag about a giant tampon sucking the entire universe into it.
Yeah.
It's like, I was having a conversation with a close friend, my best friend, about that. It's like, that wouldn't really happen. It's like, and me and her like, yeah. Well, it's not that it would really happen. She didn't actually say that. I should amend that. She's going to listen to this podcast. That's not what she said. We were just, I think she was a bit more in shock at the joke or something. Oh, I'm in trouble now. All right. Let me just move on to number 4. Number 4 is also a season 4 and the final season of The Good Place. Now, I notice a lot of the comedies that don't necessarily leave the viewers in a good place that are on my list, but this one surely does and did. It's smart. It's sweet. It's a show that I have to admit I initially gave up on after I watched the first episode and a half a couple years ago. I got convinced by someone else to give it another chance last year, and I was glad I did. Did the binge, whatever. I just think it's just a strange and lovely show. This is where you get that considerably lighter side of Ted Danson, no less. But the whole main cast is just delightful as well. And so I don't need to list their names. But the recurring performers like Maya Rudolph and Mark Evan Jackson, that's the guy who plays that despicable Sean guy. I love that guy. And Jason Mantzoukas is terrific. It's just a great show that had I think, a very satisfying and maybe a little bit emotional send-off. And considering there are some things we see that end not so well, even in the last week or so, it was nice to see that The Good Place went out on a good. I should have written a joke for the end of this goddamn entry.
Oh, you missed your opportunity.
I know. Take it off my hands when you guys just start talking.
Well, I will say, I mean, like, if I didn't adore Kristen Bell before, throughout the journey of The Good Place, she's just wonderful. And you get to see Ted Danson. But what I really appreciated was the journey of Chidi, and seeing where this show went with the supporting cast and the way they wrapped it up. I mean, it's a pretty big deal to wrap up a show about the afterlife. I mean, that's a higher degree of difficulty than boy and girl get married and live happily ever after. So
yeah, absolutely.
So it kept its quirkiness, but kept its heart. And so I thought they stuck the landing and really went out on a high note. And man, it's just great to see Ted Danson, and I thought he was so wonderful in this. So yeah, kudos to The Good Place.
Yeah, we really like the show in this house, but oddly enough, my kids are the biggest fans, and my kids are like elementary age. I don't know how they get the jokes. I don't know how they get the material, but they really can wrap their head around it. And my daughter adores Kristen Bell. I mean, it's Princess Anna. So,
oh, God,
it is definitely a show that, I mean, it took 2 or 3 episodes of us watching it. My kids were hooked. And so they were the ones that were pushing, like, can we watch it? Can we watch it? So we kept watching it. And it's a great show. It's funny. It sticks the landing. It takes all of these crazy existential thoughts that we have as humans and wraps them up into a way that is comedic, but makes sense, and is meaningful. And it's great writing. I don't know how people can do it, but that's why they get paid the big bucks.
Well, I want to add, you made me think of something, Jamie. I think there's something about this show and the intentional like color design of it. It
Yes.
looks really good. Like
it does.
It has sort of a color palette that's very bright, and very pleasant, and the intentional design of how it looks is great. And like you said, I mean, who would have thought a comedy about the existential philosophy of ethics and, the afterlife would be this good. So yeah, it was great.
And I gotta say, I know we kind of earlier before we were recording, we were making some jokes about Cheers. But I've got to tell you, I grew up with Cheers. I knew who Sam Malone was growing up, so I knew who Ted Danson was, same age my kids are now. So it's kind of fun getting to see them watch this comedy and like adore this actor and the role that he's playing and know who he is by his name, which was an actor I watched as a kid in a comedy. So it's just one of those cool what goes around moments.
Oh, that's sweet. And now you're making me think of that one episode of The Good Place where he briefly is a bartender, and I'm like going, they did that just for the Cheers joke. That's why they're doing
like
that.
The annoying mom that's like, hey, let me tell you about when I was a kid. Plus, it is sort of a go-to now that if one of us needs something in the house, like we need a pen or we need somebody to bring us some tape, we yell for Janet.
Here we go. All right, so let me get to my number 3 choice for my top 10 comedies of the year. My number 3 will be the 6th and the final half of season 6, which was the final season, final 8 episodes of BoJack Horseman. I'm trying to talk about BoJack Horseman here. Kicked off the year, man. Let me be clear. If you watch this show as one massive 77 episode binge, and by the way, If you haven't seen the show, I'm telling you, you ought to do that. BoJack Horseman may just be one of the best series of the 21st century, comedy or drama. Getting to these remaining episodes, which, you know, they released in January of 2020, you know, it was almost a year ago. Even right up to the end, the show did not pull any punches with the way they resolved, you know, the various arcs for characters like Diane, Princess Carolyn, Todd, Mr. Peanut Butter, and especially and specifically BoJack himself. You know, I got to say, I mean, Job Bluth may be the funniest character Will Arnett has ever played, but BoJack Horseman is the best character that he's ever done. And again, this is another one of those shows I came to very late in the game. And it's one of those, if I think a person is of a certain, how do I say this about something like a snot? Who cares? If I think they're of a certain level of intelligence or sophistication, I say, you really need to watch this show. And you need to be, and if they only watch one, I go, no. Be patient with it. Trust me. I know what I'm talking about. I'm known for TV recommendations. This is a great show. Jamie, you had mentioned when we were talking about, was it Big Mouth? Oh, probably Big Mouth, and we also could have said the same about Harley Quinn as well. The voice, good Lord, the voices they get for this show over the course of its entire history is beyond amazing. You know, we talk
all of them. They get all of them.
I know I talked about this a lot in one of the best of 2019 podcasts, because if I remember correctly, I might have picked this as my number one show for comedies overall. I probably did. In fact, I know I did. I'm sure I did. What else would I have picked? I'm sure I did. And I was making, you know, they've got everyone from Margot Martindale to Rami Malek as, you know, recurring characters, not just like one and done things. They're showing up several times. You know, they got everybody to show up on this. There may have been that little wince-inducing thing when we had in an interview. What's her name? Why am I drawing a blank on her name all of a sudden? Wow. I can't believe I'm forgetting an actress I know so well in so many things. This is what happens when I go off script, people. Brian, main actress Glow, also from Mad Men and Community.
Alison Brie.
Thank you, Alison Brie. Wow. How did I forget her name? She had said I know she had said in an interview at some point earlier this year that in retrospect, she's feeling very uncomfortable about the fact that she had played a character who was actually voiced the character that was actually Vietnamese. Although when you speak to the writers, it's like, well, she's not looking at the right way because, you know, blah, blah, blah. She's not completely this, that, whatever. And I don't know why it kind of threw a little bit of a cloud over it, but she didn't bring this up until like 6 months after the show ended. So I'm kind of just putting that aside. It's not like a Jenny Slate situation with Big Mouth. By the way Big Mouth handled that was also brilliant. We forgot to mention that. But, wow, this show is just, wow, it's just exceptional.
I will say that early on, I know I wasn't the first person to mention it to Scott, but I had mentioned it to you because we had talked about Aaron Paul being in it, and
right.
I'd ask if you had seen it and brought up Aaron Paul, and people were already, in addition to me, telling you to watch it. And I remember when you did watch it and we talked about it again. This show tackles some pretty heavy stuff in a really good way and deals with mental illness, in about as an irreverent but respectful way as you can.
Right.
So, I think this is a wonderful show. It's probably the best thing Will Arnett's ever done. And it's
those Reese's commercials are pretty. Anyway, go on.
Well, that's true. That's
what
true.
about the Lego show?
Nah.
Lego Batman.
It's his hosting debut as that Lego competition. Whatever, irrelevant. Move on.
No, this is a great show. A great cast. And I remember when Margot Martindale was on, we were excited about that because Scott and I have talked about her on several series that we podcast about. But yeah, just a fabulous show. The writing on this show is out of this world.
Oh, it's so sharp. It's Emmy worthy. It's so good.
Yeah. If it finishes and never gets an Emmy for writing, it's a damn shame because it's written so well. But if you haven't seen it, you're in for quite the ride. Buckle up and go see it because it's, like Scott said, forget that it's animated. It's one of the best shows, period.
Yeah.
Yes, it's really good. That's all I have. It's really good.
That works.
Can't get better material
That
than
works. That absolutely. Oh, by the way, I know pre-podcast I was mentioning about trying to keep this overall podcast maybe in the 2 hour or less range. I'm already throwing that out right now, so I have no idea.
Not gonna happen.
I'm just saying I have no idea how long this podcast is going to be, and I don't care. So if it just turns out to be as long as the first cut of The Freshman, so be it. Imagine
Hear that 2020 run.
Imagine how long the first cut of that was. Anyway, let me move on to, oh God, we're up to my top two. Now, I know the two of you, and probably most people out there, can kind of already guess what the top two are going to be. So obviously it's just a matter of who finishes on top. Yep, that's what she said. And who's runner-up. And much like I think I remember saying about last year in 2009 for the 2019 drama one, where I said between the final season of Mr. Robot and Watchmen, it could be a coin flip. The same kind of applies here, but I gave it a lot of true, genuine back and forth thought. So here we go. My number two choice for best comedy of 2020 is What We Do in the Shadows, season 2. Now look, hey, it's an actual comedy series in the past 10 years I actually watched from the start, which, that's it. Is that the only one? That and Curb Your Enthusiasm are the only shows in this that I watched from the very start. Well, that's what happens when you get a show. It's just simply bloody brilliant. Nandor, Lazel, Nadja, they're the most outrageously narcissistic and obtuse and just hysterical characters to watch. Colin Robinson is probably one of the most understatedly funny characters I've seen in some time. But season 2 was really more about Guillermo than anything else, and Harvey Guillen's work is likely overlooked quite often by the other more showy performances. And then you have, well, there's one episode specifically, but I'm saving that for a later conversation. It's just such a great season. I didn't think they could top the first season. I think they might have. I love that it seemed like everyone and their left ball was suddenly a fan of the show this year, and I was like, where were all you people last year when I was talking about it? No one's talking about it. Then again, they've all seen the movie and I haven't. Who cares? But it's just a great show. It's my number 2 choice. And I got a feeling it's possible one of you might be having it on your list as well. I don't know. Maybe not. I feel it's possible.
I would say that you should place that bet, Scott, because I love this show. Love this show.
Me too.
Probably my favorite comedy of the last 5 years. Just the quirkiness, the Colin Robinson stuff. It kills me.
Oh, the Collins promotion episode.
Collins promotion.
Oh man,
that
so good.
When you were talking about what made you laugh the hardest, when he's going through the office, just the idea that when he talks to people, it sucks the life out of. That episode absolutely slayed me. The show it makes me laugh more than almost any show I've seen, and it's not the typical kind of show. I'm usually more the Curb guy, but just the wackiness, the silliness, this show kills me. And I thought season 2 was, to quote you, bloody brilliant.
It's so good.
It's so ridiculous, and I loved the movie too. So it was not a big stretch to get into this show, but oh my God, it's just dumb belly laughs. So it's, I can't imagine somebody not liking it. And if they don't like it, they're dumb.
Scott, can I ask you a question? Because I don't know as much of the development stuff, but was Taika Waititi involved much in season 2?
I know he's involved with the show overall. I don't know what level of involvement he had in season 2. I think he might have. But I don't. He's such a busy guy. I don't know if he did anything with season 2. Same with Jermaine. How do you pronounce his name? Thank you. Oliver to me. He'll always be. Don't give me that Fly the Concord stuff. No, he's Oliver. But I mean, from what I can recall, because I don't have the information or even IMDb open in front of me, it was the two of them that were the main forces behind the movie, and that's the creation of the series, right? So I'm pretty sure he has a hand in it. I'm sure he had. I would be shocked if he didn't.
Well, I mean, that guy right now, like what he touches, his comic sense is he's plugged into what's funny, and he also. I'm going. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. No, I was just going to say, and season 1 was great, and there was no sophomore slump. Season 2, I thought was even better, and for me, the best comedy of the year.
It was close for me, and also the other thing I was going to say about the gentleman we were discussing, as I mentioned recently on Facebook, but it's a gag that I came up with out of nowhere while watching an award show with someone about a year or two ago. I think it was when that movie, the one with the kid and the Nazis and the Hitler.
Oh, Jojo Rabbit.
Thank you. Was winning the awards. And, I think it was when he was winning the screenplay award. And I just said, it's like, all right, take away a titty won the award. And now I can't call him anything other than that. And if you look at the name, trust me, if this was like an old episode of Saturday Night Live with Will Ferrell and Daryl Hammond doing Jeopardy, Sean Connery would be saying, I'll take away a titty for anyway, because look, it's even spelled, it's broken out that way. So anyway, all right, let me move on. So we are up to my top pick, my number 1 choice for TV comedy of the year. And as you might have guessed, it's clearly got to be the final season of Modern Family. No, I'm kidding. Wouldn't that be funny if I suddenly did it? I haven't watched that in like 5 years. I don't know. I heard they were going to kill someone on the show. Did they actually? No. Anyway, no. It is obviously and almost unbelievably the 6th and final season of, it, Jamie. It's Schitt's Creek.
I knew it was going to be your number 1.
Now you and others the few who have ever read a Facebook post of mine can accuse me of recency bias if you like. But yeah, I did binge all 80 episodes of Schitt's Creek in the days after Christmas and completed the series with literally 1 hour left in the year. I got
That's
it in,
great.
Not to go with another "that's what she said" joke, but I got it in just in time. Now I suspect we might be talking about a bit more about the show throughout the podcast. I don't know. I'll just say for myself, the series was kind of a revelation. You could say it was like Arrested Development meets Newhart, but with even more heart. I just hit the microphone with my pinky. And I love Stevie, no matter what season it is, or was. But, I'm sure we're going to talk even more about the comedy genes of the Levy family. Levy? Because I went out with someone whose last name is not pronounced the way it's supposed to. Now it screws me up whenever I see that name. And so much more about the show later in the podcast. I just knew it was going to be a quality series when I started it. I was just bowled over, especially when we got to that final season, by how much I truly loved, not liked, not appreciated, loved this show. It's that good. So good. I'll stop now.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And I was even later to the party than you. And because I'd heard so many good things, we were getting ready to do the podcast. I finished binging it 2 days ago.
Nice.
And I was texting Scott as I watched it.
That's right. That's right.
And saying things like, "Oh my God, I love Stevie." Oh my God, I love the relationship between Johnny and Stevie as he sort of, mentors her in business. And, being a child of the 80s, I know a lot of people have strong feelings about Chris Elliott, but I like Chris Elliott, and I always think of Chris Elliott on David Letterman back in the day. When I don't know the actress's name, but the woman who plays his wife.
Catherine O'Hara?
No.
I don't have it in front of me. I'm sorry.
But as the show goes on, she really is great. Twyla, the ensemble is wonderful. And can I just say, probably the biggest revelation to me was how talented Eugene Levy's son is. He is
he's so great.
Just wonderful. And because he's a creator, producer, writer type guy, to know he was that involved in the show and still have those sort of comedic chops, the face acting, the physical acting. This is a show that I got to the party after it was over, and I'm sorry I missed it as it happened, but really a great show and a big victory for Canadian broadcast, which was their show. A huge, and so whatever. Usually when people build a show up this much, I'm disappointed, and I was not. It was everything people said, and shame on me for not watching it sooner. So if you haven't watched it, go watch it. It's great.
I love that I didn't catch on to it right away and start watching it until this year, because it's every episode is just very short and sweet, and like there's no filler, and everything that's there is supposed to be there, and it just hits these beats that are so great and rolls you right into the next episode. So it's probably the most binge-worthy comedy that I've ever really got to binge. But I have to say, we were talking about Daniel Levy, like every single scene that he's in, whether he has a speaking role or not, he steals the scene, because his facial expressions are so, it's like reading his mind. They're just absolutely the best things that 2020 has ever laid out on my plate. It's Daniel Levy's facial expressions. And the scene with him and Catherine O'Hara when they're doing the wine tasting is definitely one of the funniest things I have ever seen in my life. And they go back to that table and they're drunk, and there's 70 different wine glasses out and all these different mixtures, and every single one makes him gag. And it's just so funny. Yeah, it's a great show. I love seeing that we've got these family members working together, but then yet when you have David and Alexis together in a scene, like as siblings, they they sell it as siblings. They can mimic each other's voices and the way that they speak. It's just, I could go on for like hours about all the great things about this show, and that's why it's won all the awards.
Right.
And I just want to add one thing, Jamie, made me think of. I forgot. And you know what? I was really surprised. And it was done so well that I didn't pick up on it, but I was reading something about the show afterwards. Is the fact that, Stevie, and Dan Levy's character, why am I forgetting? Probably because I just finished David and Stevie, that the sort of pansexualism of a lot of the characters in this show, yes. like nobody in the town gives a shit. Like I
love it.
Like there's
Oh my God, it's so refreshing. And it also shows something to the blight of Canadian thought process, like in social stigmas versus, anywhere else's. But and that's another wonderful thing about Daniel Levy is like he wrote this character as a gay man himself. He wrote himself as a gay / pansexual character without really making it a thing about the character. It's just, it's okay. It's normal. I'm a regular person, and we're not going to sit here and rehash it because the town embraces it, because he is that person. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I got choked up, in particular, the episode where his husband's family comes.
Oh my God.
And he hadn't come out to them. And he thinks that they might be upset that he's gay, and they don't care about that at all. They're upset that he didn't tell them, that
Yes.
he would think that like they wondered why he would be afraid to tell them. And I just thought that was such a refreshing take. And the real thing, being from a small town, it didn't treat the small town people as idiots or rubes in a way that was like punching down at them for being less than this family.
Right.
Everybody in the town, eventually shows their value.
Yes.
And the performance of the supporting cast is great. The Jazzagals. And the thing that really I caught on to late, but is all of the different pronunciations, by
Pepe.
Pepe, the Pepe. Yeah, like her pronunciation.
Yeah, Pepe.
Look, I was telling Scott, the two comedic actors at the top of the bill, you knew this would be good.
Yes.
But you didn't know that Dan Levy would bring the goods, and Emily Hampshire was great as Stevie. This show really had a lot of heart and told a great story, was hilarious, and deserves all the awards and deserves all this stuff.
And like literally every single character had its moment to shine. There's none that felt like they weren't written well enough or that they didn't matter. And can I just say that like the best long-handed joke in the whole thing that we didn't know was coming was finding out that Twyla was a millionaire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I don't know why that just killed me. It was so funny, but it shows it was such a great moment just for everybody to remember how this town took these folks in and loved them. They loved them, even though they were rich and they could have been highfalutin, snobs, but this town pulled the humanity right out of them and made them proud to be where they were. I just thought it was awesome.
Absolutely. A little lingering business, just, the postscript for my list, because, I got to do that. I will give you both an honorable mention and a dishonorable mention. Now, honorable mention really should be known as the show I remembered I watched after I'd already watched Star Trek Lower Decks and put it on the list. It turned out, oh wait, there was another comedy or two I watched. So I said, okay, I already want to rant about Lower Decks, so it's staying on the list, even though I could have put it, and I already have something for my dishonorable mention. So my honorable mention is actually going to be the second season of the Ricky Gervais series, Afterlife.
Thank you. I am so glad you said that, because that is sitting on my honorable mention list.
Excellent. Because it's I'll get my alliteration in here, my perfectly pleasant and poignant, and it's in sync with the previous season. And I just spit the microphone. But probably even more so than his previous series, Derek, or even that Life's Too Short. It's very slight. It's like a show that it barely has a reason to exist. I know why it does, but it's strange in that sense. So it's definitely likable, and in a weird way, because especially those previous series I just mentioned, they all have that certain kind of odd little quirkiness to them. Especially because he's also been bringing in some of the same actors that we've seen a few times over. So it's almost like they're his go-to troupe to a certain extent. But I really like it. I'm a big Ricky Gervais fan to begin with, so that certainly helps.
It doesn't take a ton for me to like his work. It really doesn't.
But the only thing I just caution myself or those I'm speaking to about it this way. I got it in my honorable mention list, but there's also a reason why I didn't decide to take something out of my top 10 and put it in. Because I really do like the show, but I have to also be honest. I'm still waiting for Ricky Gervais to do a series that's just in that same kind of strata or caliber, and not just of The Office, which obviously, that's the one people will go to automatically. I'm a huge fan of Extras. I think it's the overlooked jewel of his work. In many ways, I like Extras better than The Office.
Yes.
But it's just...
I love it. One of my favorite episodes of television ever is the David Bowie episode.
Oh, the David Bowie episode.
Speaking of Happy Birthday, David Bowie. Putting it out.
So what is it? What's the song? Sad, chubby little fat man.
Chubby little fat man.
When there's
chubby little loser.
There's that moment when he did it in concert. It's brilliant. Oh, look for it on YouTube. It's brilliant. And he starts doing it. Oh, and that, I mean, with Extras, and I don't want to talk about Extras, but I'm going to do it anyway. I mean, you could kind of literally have an amazing top 5, celebrity cameo or appearances.
Absolutely.
Because you've got that. Whatever the hell Patrick Stewart's doing in that episode that he's in, which is amazing. The scene between Daniel Radcliffe and Lady Diana Rigg and the condom. I'm still trying to imagine that. I'm sure that was scripted. I'm imagining Lady Diana Rigg getting that script. or imagining Ricky Gervais having to go to, so here's the idea. The kid who plays Harry Potter, he's going to accidentally flick a condom that's going to hit you in your forehead. How does that conversation happen? How?
This is the thing about Ricky Gervais, and I really think this is like where his true genius lies. It isn't in comedic timing, even though he's funny as hell. It's the fact that he really understands people. Like, he really has this major tap on what it takes to get any emotional reaction. It does not matter if it's anger or shock or funny or pulling on your heartstrings or this like emotional like regurgitation. This guy really understands how humans work. And so whatever he writes, whether it be something like The Office, which is just filled with really uncomfortable, awkward moments where we recognize how stupid we look all the time, or these really touching moments like in Afterlife, when he's sitting on the bench and he's talking to a widow about what it feels like to be widowed. He can hit every single end of the spectrum and everything in between. And it is definitely a mark of genius.
And I think the thing that stands out about him to me is whenever something funny is happening, he always seems to be really enjoying it. Like when there's like a funny moment, unlike a lot of people who are acting, he's probably such a good actor that he's communicating that. But he's communicating it so well, I feel like he's not acting.
Yes.
That he's actually enjoying the funny moments and the things that happen. There's a real authenticity that he puts off. So yeah,
he loves funny people who are funny accidentally.
Right. Absolutely. Also, I'm having a flashback. If I'm not mistaken, didn't he appear way, 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 way back when? Is he just on one episode? But I think, didn't he appear on Curb Your Enthusiasm once with Larry?
Yes.
I think so.
Putting those two in a room together, that's just whatever. Amazing. Then again, one of the best things I ever saw, which unfortunately it's maybe a little harder to find now due to one of the comedians and how he pretty much trashed his life, reputation, and career. But I've spoken about this before, and it's a shame about that because now it's automatically tainted. But there's a great sit down, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, precedes Seinfeld deciding to do comedians in cars getting coffee. I'm pretty sure that's true. And so I like to think this might have inspired him to do that. It was just a sit down with 4 comedians talking about comedy. And the 4 comedians were Seinfeld, Ricky Gervais, Chris Rock, and Louis C.K.
Oh my God, what was this on?
It was on HBO. I'm sure you can find it. It might be on YouTube. It might be on HBO on demand or somewhere. I forget what was. I think it might be on YouTube at this point. It's really funny. I mean, I was a huge Louis C.K. fan, so obviously what he did and everything was like, oh, God damn it. But it's still funny to watch. Just seeing them trying to get Jerry Seinfeld to tell a joke with a curse alone. and it not really working. But also 4 very different styles and ways of comedy and the way they talk. That's why I think this might have been what inspired Jerry to do Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. Because I think this came before that. But look that up. Anyway, one last thing, then I'm going to take a vacation for part of the podcast. My dishonorable mention, because podcasting is more fun when I get to trash something. So why do you think I included the Lower Decks on my list? Dishonorable mention, when I heard that the creator of Veep, the guy who was behind projects like also, In the Loop and the thick of it, comedic mind, like a trap, that he was going to do a new comedy series for HBO. And it was going to star the great, and how has he not even been knighted yet, Hugh Laurie? I was beside myself with excitement. I couldn't wait. I was like, oh my God, I can't wait for the show. And then I heard the premise about, an interstellar cruise ship thrown off course. I started to feel a wee bit of skepticism, but, I tamped it down because, hey, they got Hugh Laurie. He doesn't do crap. This guy, the guy whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce because, it's whatever. Fianucci, whatever the fuck it is. Don't care. That's not what people listen to this podcast for. That's what IMDb is for. I waited for that show to premiere. I watched the first episode. I smiled once, maybe twice. I waited the next week. Second episode. I smiled once. I gave it half a goddamn season. At best, I was mildly, and I mean oh so mildly. I mean, it wouldn't even be in, they don't make a taco sauce that low degree, so mild. Mildly amused by a couple running jokes on the show. But otherwise, I was hugely disappointed. That's right, Hugh. Get it? Hugh. And again, look, see what happens? I decide to watch a comedy when it first premieres, and then I'm... So this tells you why.
This is why you have trust issues.
Right. I have trust issues. So unless you're going to tell me that this show is featuring vampires living in Staten Island, or we're going back in time and I'm watching something in the year 2000, which is when Curb Your Enthusiasm premiered. 2000. 20 years ago. Did you realize that? 20 years ago? I tend to be let down. And Avenue 5 was my comedic letdown of the year. And that's all I had to say.
Fair enough.
I mean, it was tepid at best and wasted. I thought with Zach Woods and Hugh Laurie, at least there would be some, but the writing was just not great on that show.
I was just like, I just stared like, what can I just fast forward can I go, well, fast forward like the videotape and like I'm not using a DVR. Wow. Can I just skip this and go to last week tonight? Can I just put that on? Anyway, so there you have it. That is my entire list and whatever on comedies. I see that alone could have been one podcast by itself.
Scot's top 10.
Not my fault. You guys, I blame you guys. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so now let me hand over to the reins to you guys. So let me get this straight so that everyone out there understands. You guys are going to kind of do one of the classic ping pong back and forths with the first half of your respective lists. Is that how we're going to do it?
Right.
Pong playa.
And as I understand it, you guys are, like most normal, rational-minded people out there in the world do, you guys are actually combining comedies and dramas, unlike, Mr. Compartmentalization over here. Okay, excellent. I look forward to it. And now, I don't... Have we flipped a coin to decide who goes first?
We haven't.
We have the accounting firm of Ernst & Young drawing a ping pong ball out of a lotto.
I will actually
machine
I can flip. I will actually flip something.
Yes, do it.
Well, one of you has to call heads or tails.
I'm calling tails.
She's calling. Ooh. Anyway. You know what? You know what? That was a no win because either way I was going to react. If you said head, I would have been like, ooh.
That's what she said, no matter what.
Right. I'm actually going to flip this. Hold on. I'm flipping the gift card I was given for Christmas. Just so you know what it is. Because a coin would go flying across the room.
There was a shortage.
All
It's
right.
fine. You use the card.
Let's let the coin.
I was going to say, because it has a quarter balance left on it, right?
Oh.
That's so.
Okay.
Always. There's always a quarter left.
All right. 1, 2, 3, flip. Okay, that wasn't really a flip. There we go. It's heads.
All right.
Well, since it's heads, I will say, and obviously we just talked about it, my number 10 show of 2020 is Schitt's Creek. Very enjoyable, great show. And I will preface my list by saying, like Scott, I didn't watch everything, and there are some shows I understand that I will try to get to that didn't make my list. But Schitt's Creek is number 10, and since we've talked about that, I'll go ahead and give my dishonorable mention. Since we had fun doing that, my dishonorable mention was Space Force with Steve Carell and John Malkovich.
That was going to be mine too.
It was okay. It was okay, but with the talent, it wasn't what I thought it would be, and I was very excited to see Steve Carell back in a comedy format, and to hear Malkovich was on board. I thought, wow, this has a lot of potential, and it was okay. So I found that to be pretty disappointing. So that's my dishonorable mention.
Okay. So don't make fun of me, Scott. But
it's a reality show.
Oh, no.
It's a reality show.
Oh, no.
No. Literally, my dishonorable mention was going to be the same thing. And my number 10 pick was also Schitt's Creek. So, since both of those have been swapped up, I will just use one of my honorable mentions. And do not make fun of me. I shit you not. I will show you a picture of my notebook.
Shit Creek is
so just to be clear, in case this is a slightly inside joke on the podcast for some time, because I don't know if people remember this. When Brian and Jamie both appear on the podcast, there's been a bit of a joke where Brian would do or say something, and Jamie would just basically say, "Yeah, that's basically what I was going to say," and kind of go along with it. It's not a coincidence that I introduced them as my echo and my shadow. I really meant of each other. And nothing to do with me. They're not echoing me.
Oh, I love it. I love it because it's ridiculous. Okay, so I am going to replace my number 10 with one of my honorable mentions, and that show is going to be Raimi. It is to kind of lay it out. It's about Raimi Hassan. He's a comedian, but he created this show. He pulls some of his own personal life into it, but most of it is creative writing. It is about a guy who is a first-generation Egyptian American, and he's basically growing up in New Jersey, trying to balance his Muslim faith with his Muslim community, with being a millennial and living as an American. I mean, that's the most basic way I can lay it out. It's really, really funny. The cast is incredible. I love his father in the show. It's very, it is really funny. Some of it is a bit crass, but it is also really, really spiritual in this amazing way that does connect his faith to really what it is to be an American young man. I would suggest it to anybody who is thinking to watch it. They should definitely check it out.
Cool.
Well, Jamie, I'll have to add that to my list. Now you've given me one to watch.
You absolutely should. I think you would enjoy it.
Okay.
There you go.
My number 9, and this is dedicated to my friend Dan. My number 9 is Ozark season 3.
Yay!
I have been mercilessly slandered for saying a prior season was good but not great. But I really thought season 3 of Ozark was outstanding, and I thought the tension,
So great.
what happened on the riverboat, the introduction of the brother, how that played out. I thought Ozark season 3 ratcheted up the tension. We end with a big sort of tense moment after a plane ride that I quite frankly didn't see coming. And now season 4 is set up for the stakes to somehow even be higher. I really thought that this season Ozark was excellent and raised the game, and I really enjoyed it and thought it was excellent. So that's my number 9.
I have to say that it's definitely my favorite season of Ozark, and Tom Pelphrey's performance in it was amazing. He played Laura Linney's younger brother, and he was, oh my God, he was just so great. And the whole last 2 episodes of this season just was heartbreaking, and the last 5 minutes was very surprising. It was fantastic. There wasn't a dud episode in it, and I definitely think it still remains a top tier show.
Right. I was trying to remember what the unfortunate wrong-headed comment that Brian had made. I couldn't remember if it was him saying that it wasn't a top tier show or not a top quality. I think it was that. It might have been top tier, something like that. And then me and Dan were vilifying him. But more Dan than me, because that's,
That's what Dan's job is.
I did get my jabs in, but it's more
tier.
Yeah, no.
I have to say too, throughout the season, through the series, really, we clearly see Wendy becoming more and more involved and kind of pulling more and more strings that are happening. But this season specifically, she really becomes the true antagonist. But yeah, kind of the head crime boss of the situation. And the writing was great. And again, I mean, I know I've already said it, but Tom Pelphrey, just amazing.
I have 2 different segments that are devoted to the show in one way or another later in the podcast, so I'm not going to say anything about it for now. That hasn't already been said, obviously. So back to you, Jamie.
Okay. My number 9 is going to be season 2 of The Umbrella Academy. So here's the thing. I really liked the first season. I feel like the second season blew the first season out of the water. I adore Aidan Gallagher, and I've loved getting to see him throw in so much of himself into his character. And he's come a long way from Nickelodeon. He's done very well for himself, and he has a great sense of humor. And, he has this porcelain face that never moves, but somehow he can still exude so much emotion. And I really appreciate watching him grow into his craft. the plot of season 2. I really enjoy. Again, everybody who knows me knows I'm a sucker for anything time travel. So I really loved season 2. It's the best thing about the show, and I know we've already, you've done the podcast. Anybody who listens to this podcast feed knows, like, there's been an Umbrella Academy podcast. But my favorite thing about the show, the favorite take about the show, is that you have all of these people that have powers, but rather than it being a show about superheroes, it's really just about a family who happens to have weird abilities that sometimes get in the way of being human. And I really, really hope that season 3 stays on the same roll we're going with season 2. And yeah. Also, always has an amazing soundtrack. So
absolutely,
yeah, that's my number 9.
Umbrella Academy is an honorable mention for me. Great show. They explored a lot more of the characters' journeys this season. Really enjoyed it. In another show, that there are certain shows that have a look, and this show has a very slick, stylized look, and it looks great. And I thought this was a good season.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, my number 8.
Go ahead.
My number 8 is season 2 of Doom Patrol.
Wow.
This is a show that Scott and I have podcasted about ad nauseum. So you can check that out if you want our thoughts in exhausting detail.
Hey.
But no, actually, it's a really good deep dive and discussion of the series as a whole. But season 2 sort of expands the world of the Doom Patrol a little bit, and has some great moments, really good character development. And one of my favorite gags of the year were the sex ghosts. There's a Ghostbusters sort of gag that runs, and the great part is it continues to run through part of the season after it happens. But a great show. And probably, for my money, and I'm not a DC expert, Scott's the DC expert, but probably my favorite DC property of all the stuff I've seen, and really enjoy it. Really rewarding show, talking about all the damage and trauma to these characters. And I thought season 2 was outstanding.
Interesting.
I have never watched an episode. It's one of those that's on my Scott says I should watch it lists.
Yeah, if someone who puts Umbrella Academy on her list really needs to watch the Doom Patrol, and we'll just leave it at that.
Leave it at that. Well, I will tell you that my number 8 pick was actually going to be Ozark. So
it can still be Ozark. You don't change your list based on someone else's list.
About it. It's fine. I have enough honorable mentions. Trust me. There's other than the top 3, there's no rating. There's no rating anything that's below the top 3. They're all tied. So I am going to replace Ozark. I'm going to throw in Hunters. That was one of my honorable mentions. Hunters is just really fun. There's no really, short of a few episodes and a few specific scenes, there's no real, really deep, heavy moments, which is odd considering the subject matter. But just to give you the generic rundown of what it is for those that haven't seen it, it's Nazi hunters discover high-ranking Nazi officials in 1977 New York, and they are conspiring to create a Fourth Reich in the USA, and the hunters are just trying to find these bastards and bring them down. It has a great score. It has a wonderful opening credits with the chess pieces. The cast is fantastic. And it's, like I said, again, it's nothing that's going to move you for 3 years down the road, but it's a really fun show. It's very bingeable, and it's easy. It is an easy show to get hooked into. The end of the series is pretty 50-50. Some people love it. Some people are like, what the heck? If you like comic books, I think that you will probably like it a little bit better. But again, I would recommend it because it's fun.
I liked that show too. I think, and the amazing thing about it is Al Pacino was the big draw, but he's not the best part of it.
Right.
So, but yeah, I would say that it's a fun show to watch. And who doesn't in 2021 like to see Nazis get what's coming to them?
That's really, it's very, very cathartic. Like, we'll put that out there. If you're having a day of rage, watching your news, it's just getting to be a little bit too much, pop this in, take away for an hour, feel a little bit better about things.
We'll add this to my list of things. I'm going to talk about it a little bit later. I'll just slight spoiler. It might not be in as glowing terms as what you just did. So we'll move on from there.
Like I said, 50-50.
Exactly.
Okay. So my number 7 is The Outsider on HBO. And I loved this concept of police tracking a supernatural killer that was really done in a way that was grounded in realism, and the fact that the killer was supernatural just happened to be a fact. Wonderful acting by the whole ensemble, but the two actors at the top of the ticket just absolutely carry this show. I really enjoyed it. I looked forward to it. I know some people complained as it was happening that it moved slow. If you've listened to me, you know I don't have a problem with that. If you're establishing or you're building characters, it built characters in this world that I really enjoyed. I liked the story. I was compelled by it, and maybe, this is my Jason Bateman list because he was on this and very involved in it. I think may have directed the first half of it, if I recall.
Yep.
But really enjoyed this show. Look forward to it. And one of the best uses of a Stephen King property to be made into a show. So I really enjoyed it. You should check it out if you haven't seen it, The Outsider on HBO.
Yeah, it was really great. And as far as the Stephen King adaptation goes, I know there are really thick through thin Stephen King fans who can take something from that he's done in a novel, and they could see any film or miniseries made of it and they love it, and that's great. I am not one of those people. I love Stephen King. He is probably my favorite author. But I really have like a 50-50 with the things that have been adapted into film. It's really hard to take the magic that is Stephen King, which is basically just a bunch of crazy inner dialogue, and really be able to portray that on film successfully, though directors are getting better at it. Because anybody who's a Stephen King fan knows that the monster never really is the monster. It's always this thing in our character that's really what's scary, that real monster that's there. And that's such a big pull to anything Stephen King. There was no way to really, really portray that in this series from the book. But they found a way to still get that same like emotional, like, I don't know, like that very solemn, weighed down, reluctant feeling of acceptance between the dialogue, obviously, but a lot of the tones that was used in the color palette and the music choice. And I thought it was a really successful venture, and I had nothing bad to say about it. I thought it was great.
And it had, if you've watched TV for the last 10 years, Ben Mendelsohn and Bill Camp were two of the people in this that are always doing good work. And Ben Mendelsohn just was outstanding in this as the lead. And the newcomer, who I couldn't think of her name, is Cynthia Erivo.
Cynthia Erivo, yeah, she was so great. So great.
So, wonderful show.
Yep. I've just again, as somebody, I'm really, really critical of anything that's Stephen King that we take from a novel and put into either a series or a movie. And I loved it. I looked forward to every episode. So
Yep.
kudos to them. Okay, so on a very, very different note, one of my comedies that I threw in here for number 7, as pre-mentioned by Scott, is Pen 15. So here's the breakdown on Pen 15. So we've got 2 comedians. We've got I apologize if I pronounce it wrong, but I believe it's Erskine and Anna Conkle, and they play versions of themselves, like teenage versions of themselves, as teenage outcasts in the year 2000. So the first ridiculous notion of this series is you have 2 adult grown-ass women playing adolescent teen versions of themselves along with a full teenage cast, which alone is hilarious because you have somebody that's like 15 years old and has just a little bit of like side eye wrinkle. Like, it's so funny. So right in there, like without even having to get into the jokes, we're giggling a little bit because it's meant to be, it's not like Strangers with Candy stupidity, but it is meant to be a little bit over the top goofy just in that prospect. But as far as the rest of it goes, it's genius. It's just genius. And I don't know how a lot of men would take the show. I know my husband loved it. He thought it was so funny. But we see shows all the time, the coming of age stories or comedies of young men dealing with all the awkward crap of being an adolescent teen, like the crap you go through in school, the way you form this weird, uncomfortable relationship with your parents. We've seen that story with guys all the time. And occasionally we see little dips of it with girls. But I will tell you, every time you've seen it, it's basically been a very stereotyped, not based in reality version of this. This show takes these girls and like, it is unapologetic, all of the grossness, all of the embarrassment, like all of the shit that we would never, as teens, we would never talk about or never admit to anyone but our best friend, if that. So it is really, really uncomfortable in the funniest way. And these girls are adorable and they're lovely humans. I really think that any male, I mean, should watch it because it's funny, but any male specifically that plans on ever having a daughter really would have a heads up if they watched this. It's just these girls are off the wall, but it's really what girls are when boys aren't looking. And I know I'm talking to 2 guys. I still strongly suggest it because it doesn't matter if you're a guy or a gal. Funny is funny, and this show is funny.
I have not seen this show, but I've heard really good things about it, and it's on my list.
Yeah, it's like, all the things that, like, if you took American Pie, what it wanted to be, and decreased their age by about 4 years. Like, it's just it is not a show that they could have done 10 years ago. It's so fantastic, but it's so honest. It's like, I know these girls. I probably was kind of one of these girls sometimes, but I mean, like, it covers anything from like all the like creepy stuff that we learned about health class when we're going through like body changes, all the way to like trying to be cool when you're like hanging out with older kids and like the idea of becoming a different person in front of your friend's parents. It is, and it's not in your face. It's not trying to teach you any lessons. It's just a window looking in at the absurdity it is to grow up a human being.
Well, I'm definitely going to check it out on that recommendation, Jamie. Scott, did you see it?
No, a couple friends of mine just started watching it. They were saying they've been enjoying it so far, and I knew a little bit about it. it's again, what did I say about me in comedies? It takes a lot to push me. So it's probably going to take, maybe we'll add Jamie to the list of people who are recommending it. Usually takes like three or four recommendations before I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. But I have heard it's good. I hadn't really heard that it was really a specific gender appeal kind of a thing, but
it's really not. I said, I've only talked to one other guy who's watched it. I've heard lots of girls who watched it, but I've only talked to one other guy, and that's my husband. And he thought it was like, he actually got like the news that they were doing a season 2 this year before I did, and it like made his day. So
right, like I said, I never heard of it being like a Sex in the City, which obviously tend to have a very more female / gay appeal than whatever. I hadn't heard about that with Pen 15, but then then again, I call it penis all the time anyway. So what do I know? Anyway, let's get back. Okay, go on. Yes.
I was going to say, my. Don't worry, Scott. I'm staying on target. I'm on target.
I know.
Number 6 is Perry Mason, an engaging origin story that Scott and I podcasted about for the season. This one came out of nowhere. Had no idea it was being made. One of my favorite actors, Matthew Rhys, but a wonderful show. Really enjoyed it. Lots of character development. Great, outstanding appearance by John Lithgow in this show. Really, as Perry's mentor, explored a lot of complex issues of the time, race, sexuality. Really brought a full picture of Perry Mason as rather than just some upright do-goody in the courtroom. Established him as a hard-boiled investigator and through to his journey as a lawyer. Really, really enjoyed this season. The costumes, the period settings were great. And I just really enjoyed it and don't think it got the recognition it deserved. I think it sort of was overlooked this year, but one of my favorites of the year.
It was beautiful. I didn't know what I was going to get going into it because I didn't read any reviews before going into it. I grew up watching like every generation of Perry Mason. My stepmom's a huge fan to this day. You could go to their house and at any point in day, if Perry Mason's on, it's on that TV. So I mean, I did not know where we were going to go with this, but it's like, it's like the origin story I didn't really know that I wanted. It was so great. It was beautiful, and I mean, you can't go wrong with the cast, and the plot line was intriguing and sad, so sad. But it was worth every minute that I spent watching it, and I really enjoyed the podcast. I love when we get a show that you like love the show, and then you have to like run because you want to hear the podcast because you loved the show so much. And it was one of the it was on my honorable mentions because I knew it was going to be in yours. I knew it was going to be in your list. I was like, I'm just gonna put it over here and let Brian take the walk on that one.
Well, I mean, I loved it, and Scott and I did a reaction cast. We literally would podcast about it within 40 minutes of it ending, and it's one of those things when you sign up to do a podcast, you hope the show is going to be good, and where it was a new show, we had no idea. We were hopeful, and we stuck with it all season. So, I really enjoyed it. It's a good experience.
Yeah, it was great.
It was probably one of my more enjoyable podcasting experiences of the past year plus, as well as the series. Much like several of the things that have been mentioned already, I reserve my comments till later. No, this is good because as the clock starts ticking, when I go through stuff, it's good because you guys will already have talked about the shows,
right?
So you don't have to so it'll just basically it's just gonna be me rattling things off.
There you go.
All right, I'm sorry. Go on, Jamie.
Okay, so my number 6 is another comedy, which is like why I texted you guys. I didn't realize I'd watched so many comedies this year. But it is, again, shows my fondness for British humor. And it is Breeders. And it stars Martin Freeman and Daisy Haggard, Michael McCain, Alan Armstrong, and Patrick Balagi. And I'm going to tell you, here's the thing. I adore Martin Freeman. He's in my top 10 of everything. Like, I love him. You know, his acting is always within the same realm. It's always consistent. It's very rarely a stretch for him. Like, his characters don't stretch out really great, but he brings this amazing sense of sarcasm to everything he does. That is like the perfect mix between British and American sense of humor. I love watching him deliver lines, his little facial expressions and his little head nods. It's always pretty solid. But The Breeders is basically a show about, you know, husband and wife, a family, raising kids, but specifically he is the main character. And he's somebody who's like most of us who are parents of, you know, or have been parents of young children. You're every single moment of every day, you're kind of balancing between the desire of like watching your children thrive and loving your children and being so proud of them, but then like also kind of wanting to kill them. Like, it's like the idea that like you're filled with joy, but like you're also miserable at the same time so often as an adult when you are a parent. It's these little moments of life that you get with your kids that keep pushing you forward. And they push you forward in a way that, I mean, that nature created, because if you didn't have that man, there'd be a lot more abandoned kids. There just is. It's hard to be a parent sometimes. It's hard to be a good person. It's hard to remember your faults as a human being and not putting those faults onto your children. But all of this is done with like a great sense of humor. And there's a lot of F-bombs and a lot of eye rolls, and the conversations between he and his wife are, you know, his wife, Daisy Haggard plays his wife, and they're just so spot on. But one of the best parts of this show, honestly, is the relationships that he has with his father and his father-in-law. And his father is kind of his sounding board, where he's like, I'm a really bad dad. I'm doing really, I don't talk to them the way I should. I'm not doing this right. And his dad's really on this mode of, you're doing things exactly right. This is exactly how you're supposed to feel. And then his other counterpart is his father-in-law, which is played by McKean, but he's kind of like a deadbeat dad who kind of disappeared out of his, Martin Freeman's, his character's wife's life for the majority of her childhood. He just kind of bebops in when he needs something or a place to crash. And it's a really, really fun role to watch McKean play. But there's all this goofiness, all of this fun stuff. And in the last 3 episodes, there's this major hit that happens, and it really, really like mimics real life, where it all pulls itself back in for some reason, whether it's a tragedy or an event in life. It all just comes back together and reminds you like why you don't lose your shit and why you have to keep it together no matter what. And it's brilliantly written, super, super funny. I think it doesn't matter if you have kids or not. You're going to love the show. If you have kids, you're really going to appreciate it.
So what you're saying, basically, the show is like, go the fuck to sleep. It's like that.
Yes,
like
exactly.
The Samuel L. Jackson book. I know that you personally recommended this to me. I have not seen it, but it's added to my list.
There's just, like, gonna drop some big swears here. There's just something so real, if you've had a parent, about watching somebody go, I love you, good night, shutting the door, walking away, hearing your kid go, mom or dad, and going, fuck, what? Like, it's like just how how it goes from like, you're the most precious thing to just rage in just half a second's time. And it's really funny watching somebody else do it. But again, it's like, okay, like I get it. This is part of being a parent. I'm not an asshole. And it's great because you're watching the character come to those terms himself. Like, yep, I'm being an asshole right now. And that's the way it's got to be. Or I'm not a bad parent. And I don't know. It's really fun.
Cool. Well, we're actually going to end the podcast here. Yes, I know that must disappoint a few of you out there who especially love those really, really long ones. Come on.
That's what she said.
I set that up. I was like, I went too far with that one. And plus, whoever heard of calling a podcast thick. But seriously, when we first recorded this, it ended up being in the neighborhood of a head-melting 4 hours. So after some careful post-production surgery and a few retakes and whatnot, hey, just like last year, we're splitting this into 2 podcasts. So you can look forward to me kicking off part 2. Me? I meant us. Kicking off part 2, looking back at the best. Oh, no, I do mean me. You see, I really should pay attention to my notes. Wow, can I do another retake? No, we're going to leave this in. You can look forward to me kicking off the next podcast with my discussion of the best TV episodes of 2020, as well as getting to hear Jamie and Brian rolling out their respective top 5s in 2020 television. Oh, and yeah, I still got a little list countdown of my own on the best TV dramas of 2020 to get to as well. So, there's that. So there you have it. All that said, if you guys enjoyed this podcast, you'll enjoy hanging out on our Facebook page as well. It's the Serious TV Drama Podcast page. Like the page and join the conversation on various TV shows. Pretty much anything we've talked about on this podcast and beyond. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, where you can subscribe to our feed, as well as rate and review us there. And hey, if you want to check, all 200, this will be 290, what did I say, 295? You can check out all 295 episodes of this podcast, oh my God, at stvd.podcast.podbean, no wait, it's stvdpodcast.podbean.com. Wow, I don't have the 3 in the morning, I'm tired excuse tonight. And finally, you can follow us on Twitter. Our handle there is at STVD Podcast. That's STVD as in Serious TV Drama. So there you go. Brian, Jamie, I have to thank you especially for being willing to accommodate my semi-perfectionism here by making yourselves available for a few minor re-recordings tonight.
Hey, no problem. And I'm sure the listeners will want to come back to see if the Great British Bake Off is your number one show.
Well, actually, I found a version of that on Pornhub. Almost all the words are the same, except one. Can you guess which one it is?
I'm not trying. This is like War Games. The only way you lose
I'm
is
just
to play.
hoping that the team spirit is as lively as it is in the non-porn version.
Did you say that? Oh, I thought you said the teat spirit. And it's like, what?
That's true. Why not?
Who's referring to them as teats anymore, or less? Anyway,
team. It's all the same.
All right. The word was baked, by the way. Anyway, so we will be releasing, in case there's like one idiot out there who wouldn't have figured it out, we will be releasing part 2. I'm going to say probably, 24 hours after this one. Got to give them a little space to breathe. So as much as you've enjoyed this podcast, you've got something just as good, if not better, to look forward to. As I know Brian would appreciate, it's kind of the left Twix to the right Twix.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with that said, good night to everybody out there. Good night to Brian. Good night to Jamie. I will let each of you all say whatever you wish here, as well as saying goodbye, farewell, and amen, and a woman. If you
hey,
singular.
We'll see you soon.
See you tomorrow.